and welcome to Biz Buzz with Bruno. I'm your host, Michael Bruno, and we're presented by the ever-popular madstheater.com. And today we are blessed to have Madison's own Meryl Streep, if I may. The wonderfully talented Sarah Day. Sarah, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come and chat with us today. It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So for people that may not know you, if they've been living like under a rock for the past couple of years, tell us a little bit about your beginnings here in Madison.
Well, I was born at Madison General Hospital. I was born and reared here in Madison. And that's my story.
We're actually neighbors, right?
We are.
We're West Siders.
Right. And we're as kids as well, I guess. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what started you on your theatrical career? How did you get bitten?
Well, I really did enjoy, I was in a lot of the high school musicals at West High, which I understand you're Edgewood, but
That's
I
right.
was West High. And I got to do those, and I really enjoyed them. I wound up, how I got started professionally was I wound up taking an evening class at Edgewood College that was offered by the person who was the artistic director of Wilson Street East, who was Seth Reines. And he had offered this class in how to audition, which I don't know. I just thought, well, that'd be interesting for me to do. And he then said, I would like you to audition for a show that we've got coming up. And the first show I auditioned for was Funny Girl. And I wound up, I remember we had an audition where all of the actors who were auditioning were in the room, were in the place at Wilson Street East. And for those of you who don't know what Wilson Street is, East, where it was obviously on East Wilson Street, but it's where Essen House is right now. And so everybody that was auditioning was in the room. And I remember the big thing was I was, reading from the script and people laughed. And I was just kind of startled by that these people who were making, that were doing this professionally laughed at my performance. So I was like, if nothing happens other than that, I'm just so happy. But then I wound up getting a job in that.
And did you go on to do other shows at Wilson Street East?
I did do quite a number. Yeah. I was in Annie Get Your Gun, which I think was the last production there. And I was in Sound of Music, and I was in Last of the Red Hot Lovers. And, a number of shows there.
And do you remember what years those were? Offhand?
Yes, because I turned 20 when I was working there.
Wow.
And so it was, I shouldn't have said that.
Math is hard. Nobody's doing math today.
It was in the late 70s, in 1978. And I had gone there, I remember, as a class trip to see something in high school. And then I wound up being in a show while I was in college. So...
And again, ships passing in the night, because I was doing children's theater there with Rebecca and Ralph Sandler.
Oh, my gosh.
So we were doing the children's shows on the weekends on a Wednesday afternoon while you were doing the evening shows.
Yep.
So we were always packed up and out of there. But I have incredibly fond memories of that postage stage stamp doing these big Broadway shows and I believe it was even before Fireside. I think they were the first and only dinner theater that was rear-run. And that was the old Hoffman House originally, way before our time.
And Ed Flesch, who was there. Then the Klopsic family, who own and were running the Fireside, asked him to be their artistic director. And it was because they were thinking, they came to Wilson Street East and got the idea. They'd been a great restaurant before, but they wanted to do something interesting and more with their restaurant. So it was before before this Fireside.
So tell me a little bit about then, how did you make the transition up to Spring Green and the wonderful APT?
Well, I met while I was there, and I was in a show, Oliver, with a man named Steve Hemming, who became like an instant big brother to me.
I miss him so much.
He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant, and one of the funniest, kindest, most handsome men I ever met. And and we remained friends, and he wound up going to work at APT. And then I went to see him in a show, and he said, I think you should audition here. I think you'd be really happy here. And I'm like, oh, I could never audition here. And I remember then auditioning for them in 1985. And then right after the audition, they wound up, the theater closed. I don't think I was the reason that it closed.
Absolutely not.
But it wound up closing. And I was living in Chicago at the time. And I remember my parents had sent me, it was the headline in the State Journal that APT had closed. And they wound up having wonderful people here in Madison, friends of APT, and in Spring Green, and they were able to also secure a loan from the state of Wisconsin, and they came back. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing that happened. And during that time, they wound up losing one of their actors because there wasn't a job there. And so Steve called me up in Chicago and said, yeah, I think you just tell them you would like to audition for them, either in Chicago or Madison or Spring Green, that you'll be able to. And so I wound up calling and saying, I auditioned last, blah, 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 blah. And they said, oh, all right, thank you. And they called back about an hour or so later and said, oh, we remember your audition. We would like to invite you to be a part of the company. So that's how it happened. It was because of Steve Hemming, I would say.
Oh, and was that when Randall was still the artistic director?
Yes, and I was there with when he was the artistic director, he and Ann Occhio-Grosso, for 6 years with him. Yeah.
So that was 19...
I started in 1986.
86.
And APT had started in 1980. So.
And it was closed down for it was less than a year, wasn't it?
Oh, it was closed down for about 3 months.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that long. I remember it being a big story at that time. 'Cause I had gone out, I had left for the West Coast in 1983. And I heard all, of course, my parents were still here, so I'd get all the news and all the gossip about going on in theater. And of course, when it opened, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful repertory Shakespearean company in the hills at Spring Green. So you've been there ever since then, haven't you?
Yeah, this is my 38th season there.
Wow. And have you done a show every season?
Well, at least 2, if not 4. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is truly amazing. And your performances, I have to tell you, anybody that I've said Saturday, they, oh, I saw her in this. Oh, my gosh, I saw her in that. Oh, my gosh, I saw her in this one-woman show, and it changed my life. And it's like, well, I get to sit next to her and talk to her. It's like I couldn't be more thrilled.
I have better writers, I guess. Yeah.
But you've also done the gambit of you just haven't done the Shakespearean company as what you're doing now. You're actually working on 2 different shows in repertory, correct?
Right.
And tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Well, right now I am in Our Town, and one of the wonderful things about Our Town is that it was written by Thornton Wilder, who is a Madison native. His father had been the editor of the Wisconsin State Journal at the time of his birth. And actually, 2 days ago, I wound up having a conversation with Tappan Wilder, who is his nephew and the executor of the estate. And so he had a real Madison connection. And when APT first did the play, I played Mrs. Webb in it. And right now, I am playing the stage manager in it. And I have to say, it has been just a joyful experience. It's a beautiful play, and I feel really grateful that I get to work on it.
And up until recently, the stage manager has usually been a male's role, traditionally.
Right.
So it's wonderful to see that they're saying it doesn't make any difference. It's a very non-gendered role.
Right.
And it also probably brings a whole different perspective to it, to having your perspective and having a woman's perspective on that particular time and narration of the story.
Well, I think one of the things that, if I were to say what I think I bring to it, is that I'm the one who really speaks to the audience and sort of introduces. And because I have such a history with APT, and a lot of people who come and see shows there feel as though they know me by having seen me on stage, that there's sort of a sense of, I know her. And so that's a really great way to be a storyteller, is if you feel a comfort level with somebody as opposed to a stranger telling you a story. And it's one of the joys about a play that is all about community And the APT audience is such a community, and so many of the actors that are on stage there have been there for a decade or more, that there is a sense of our town, of our community being part of it. And since I have such a long history, me being the one to relate the story, I think is an interesting way to go about it.
Oh, it's a perfect idea. It's absolutely perfect. So when you take your stage manager's hat off, you're also doing another show in repertoire. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that performance.
Well, we're doing a play called Anton's Shorts, which is a series of one acts by Anton Chekhov. And there are, so they were, he is sort of famous for having done 4 major plays of Cherry Orchard and Seagull, but he had some sort of what they call vaudevilles, which were short little plays. And APT had done them before I had come to APT. And but they're really beautiful one-act plays, and I'm in one that is just absolutely silly and lovely, and I have a good time doing that. And it's a perfect difference from the stage manager for me to do it.
And it's also kind of interesting that, that Chekhov has something that's actually lighthearted and fun.
Right.
You think, oh, right. Chekhov, it's going to be dreary, and it's going to be
right.
oh this and oh my, oh me.
Yeah.
It's fun that he actually has a short play that actually has some humor to it.
Yeah. Yeah, he really does. And in this, there are 5 different sequences, and 2 of them are monologues. One of them is a 2-person show, and then the 2 others are 3-person shows. And The Bear and The Proposal are ridiculous comedy, And the other ones have humor in it, but there's also something very lovely about them as well.
And those play at the smaller indoor theater?
No, those are
on the main stage as well?
Yeah.
So is anything playing at the other theater?
Yes, there are 3 plays going on in the Touchstone. We have, there's a play called Mala, and that is a wonderful play. Nancy Rodriguez is doing a 1-person show. There's another called A Once Upon a Bridge, which is an Irish play. And then, The Royale, which is the wonderful story, though they don't use his real name, about Jack Johnson, the boxer.
Oh,
and it is a beautiful play,
And is that locally written?
No.
Ah, okay.
No. I don't know where the playwright is based out of. Sorry.
And now, when you still have 2 more performances
of the state of our town,
yeah. which I'm sure there probably isn't a seat to be had, but if you want to get them,
it might be.
Your last performance is this Friday,
right?
And then does I'm not sure when, is that the final performance of the outdoor theater?
No, that'll be either the 7th or 8th of October. We always close the first week of October.
And the Touchstone Theater. Does that stay open year round now?
No, the season will end on that same Sunday. But right now, just this past week, they started working on Proof. That play Proof right now. They just started rehearsal on that, and that'll go sometime into November. I'm not sure of the actual end date. But the artistic director, Brenda DeVita, is directing that, and Kelsey Brennan is in that, and David Daniel.
First time I saw Proof was at the Bartell Theater with Jessica Jane Witham, and she just knocked my socks off.
She's a wonderful actor.
Oh, my goodness. And that was such a wonderful performance. It was just such a great show. Great. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad they're doing that. Yeah. So will you get a little downtime then? Will you have a break?
I do have a little downtime.
Something immediately right now?
No, I don't have anything immediately. So I've got to figure out what to do.
So obviously, since you're probably the hardest working actress in the entire state of Wisconsin, what do you do in your downtime? Do you are you constantly thinking, I've got to look for my next project, or I have to think what I want, or are you just kind of like, I'm going to go up to a cabin in the woods, I'm going to read some books, and I'm going to sit and twiddle my thumbs for a bit and recharge my batteries? I'm always curious to know about what actors do, especially when that's your job.
Right.
When it's your career and it's your job.
Right. It's a combination of things. One of the great things that I feel fortunate about when I moved back to Madison was an actress here, Colleen Burns.
Another one I missed.
Yes. Oh. She asked me to be a part of Forward Theater. After Madison Rep had closed, a group of artists gathered at the dining table of Celia Clare and Sam White and came up with the idea of what can we do to make sure that Madison has a professional theater. So wound up choosing our artistic director of Jenna Uphoff Gray, and then a group of us were able to have Forward Theater come about. And I'm one of the proud founders, and I was part of what they called the advisory company, where the theater professionals in the area would be reading plays and advising the artistic director in the same way that a board of directors is the person who advises the managing director. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a brand new way of thinking of things. It is. And so I was a part of that. And I just stepped down this last summer because I had been doing that for 15 years. And I felt we are on with a wonderful new generation, next generation of people putting their heart and soul into keeping Forward Theater a wonderful company. And I'm like, I can, good. I think 15 years of service was okay.
So now that you put that to rest, the question's still going to be, when the show closes, what will you do with yourself?
Well, I mean, I have been working there quite a bit during my time away from APT. And so that was always fun to be working on what that was going on. I'm also one of the things, too, that I love is that because I live in this area, I'm also involved in different volunteer things that I really enjoy. And being around non-theater people and to be engaged in, I'm on the board of the Friends of the UW-Madison Library, and I'm working with the Wisconsin Book Festival and with different organizations. I think that that's an important way to be of service in that way as well to a community of which you're a part.
So have you ever dipped your toes into the directing pool?
That is, I feel like it's just enough for me to stay in my lane. I admire the people who have that skill set, but I don't.
And what about writing? Have you done?
I am not a good writer, but there are a lot of people, and a lot of the people who are at APT are really wonderful writers. Jim DeVita is published so many plays and books, and he's a wonderful director. And there are other people. I'm not that skilled, but I'm okay with that.
Well, you obviously have picked the correct path to go down because
I'm doing okay.
As an actor, you are sincerely, as a former actor myself, you are so engrossing that I would sit and listen to you read the phone book, of which there aren't any anymore. So.
What's a phone book? I don't know what you mean.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Yeah. What was one of your favorite roles that you've played? Do you have a favorite?
It's such a silly thing, and I know that it's always the one that I'm working on that I really love. And so right now I am really engrossed in Thornton Wilder and his works, and that's been the fun thing. And there's a new novel that came out last month called Tom Lake that is written by Ann Patchett, and she's a wonderful novelist. And she uses our town as the basis of this novel. It's about a woman who had been an actress as a young woman and winds up how her life weaves around this play. It's a fascinating story. And the big thing is that Ann Patchett said, I read Our Town every year, at least once.
Wow.
And that she is she sees that play as such an important part of her life and how she wanted to share it with more people and wants people to go back to that play and read it and all of Thornton Wilder's work. So I'm kind of in that world right now.
I love that. So conversely, have you ever been in a show that you were like, when is this going to end? This is really, why did I pick this particular show? What am I doing here?
Well, I mean, it is one of the things, I feel so lucky that I've worked at APT, and usually this year I'm only in 2 shows consistently, other than an understudy possibility. But so, when you're in at least 3 shows every season, there'll be plays that you like more than others. But at the same time, it's like trying to look for the positive on something is always the challenge. And there have been plays that I haven't felt that I was at my best, or in the sense of I'm working on trying to figure out how to do it, and feeling as though I'm failing. Is sort of how I.
Interesting. And do you think that was a choice because the director really wanted you for a role that maybe you thought, I'm not really right for this role, or once you got into it, you were like, I just can't find the character?
A little bit of both, I think. Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm not sure, but both those things play into it, I'm sure.
And we were talking earlier too about doing Are We Delicious and doing that type of theater.
Yeah.
And I know you had said you had gone to see it, but have you ever tried doing that type of theater?
I haven't, but what I did do, and was I wound up right at the end of 2019 and in early 2020, and we know what happened after, is I was taking classes from Monkey Business Institute. And that taking improv classes is, I have pretty good writers when I'm dealing with, Shakespeare and Chekhov. So just learning the skill set or trying to learn what improv was about was a really great challenge for me. And I remember I was telling an actor friend of mine, and they literally said, "You are so brave," and it wasn't a joke.
No,
and I'm
no,
like, "Oh
truly.
yeah, right, I'm so brave." But it was. I admire people who do it so much, and yeah, because there's nothing better than seeing it really sing, and when it doesn't sing, just really admiring the attempt of it. So giving that a little go was fun because it really put me in a different place. And
So during those dark ages, those couple of years, were you just taking classes like that? Because obviously you weren't performing.
Yeah, we were.
Oh, you were performing during
Brenda
COVID?
DeVita, the artistic director of APT, was making sure that that those of us that are part of the core company were able to get insurance, health insurance, and be able to have us employed. And then there was a wonderful thing where we wound up doing Zoom plays right in 2020 during the summer of 2020 when that was brand new, and all of us trying to learn that technology was a crazy time. But we were doing Chekhov one acts, we were doing a bunch of different plays, and they were wanting to make sure that we were able to be employed doing stuff. And it was in my childhood bedroom that I was doing Shakespeare and Chekhov, literally. So they were trying to keep us employed and doing things.
I've got to say that the blessing in disguise during that, because fortunately CBS kept me on when they could have just said, there are no shows, there's no entertainment, you're off the air. And because of Zoom being there, and the kids are what impressed me the most, because here were kids that were in their junior and senior year that were ready to do their big musicals or their big shows. And all of a sudden the curtain came down and they was like, not going to happen. And then they had to learn a whole new skill set. It was like suddenly these kids were in their bedrooms or in their living room, learning how to put a microphone in, how to do their own hair and makeup, finding props, and doing video and doing film. When these were all theater kids, so I was so impressed with them, and it was such a joy to go and watch and zoom in with them and watch, and talking to their educators and talking to the drama teachers and how they had to make a complete 180 turn so that they would have something to say, yeah, we didn't get to do, Our Town, or we didn't get to do On the Town. Our big musical was going to happen, but we got to do something, and and it got saved for posterity. Yeah. So the shows that they did do during that time, I think it's probably going to help a lot of those kids, because they probably never would have gotten video, experience, acting for the camera, which, as you know, is completely different than acting on the stage. Yeah. But I think it taught them a lot of skills that they can take with them as actors. Yeah.
And something about resilience and adapting, and that's everything about theater as well. Well, that didn't work. You try that, right? That's
right.
So, there were fascinating lessons that came from that.
Yeah, I was those couple of years. It was like that really it kind of saved my own sanity, and it was just really wonderful to think about. Those kids now that are going on to professional careers have that in their back pockets.
Yeah.
I really, really, really like that.
Yeah.
So the other thing I don't know, which I didn't, is scrolling through the pages of your resume. Have you done television and film work?
I really haven't.
Did you ever aspire to doing that?
Other than as a child, standing in a mirror accepting an Oscar. No.
Into your hairbrush, right?
Yeah. I sang into my hairbrush.
Yeah.
I took a shampoo bottle and that was my Oscar. Yeah.
I love it. So in talking about, working through things, and I know that the big headline now, of course, is the strike that's going on.
Oh, gosh.
And I think, fortunately, for those of us that are in the theater, that really equity hasn't taken any stance on AFTRA and SAG. Is that am I correct in that?
I think you're right. I'm not sure though. I haven't really kept up with what.
Because that's affecting so many of my friends. Because I lived in L.A. and San Francisco for 20 years when I was working in television and film, and I know there's so many people that I know that are still there, and the scope of it. It's not just the actors that this affects. It's like the hairdressers, the set designers, the craft services, the people that drive the trucks around. The ramifications of what are going on. Everybody's out of work. It's not just those people that are fighting for for their livelihoods. It's really astonishing to me, and I'm very thankful that I'm not back there doing that, because I would be on the picket lines as well.
Of course.
And
I mean, between writers. When the writers started, you want to go, well, you're not going to have anything to say. You're not, but yeah, and it is the ramifications of a place like Los Angeles. I don't know how that economy has kept going, quite honestly, when you think of all the people who are serving the entertainment industry. The other thing is, here in Wisconsin, I think that there's nothing. We're not an industry in that same kind of a way, whereas making films, making movies, making TV, that's an industry where there are bottom lines and there are executives who are making scads of money, and there are workers who are not, and then there are so many other industries, like you said, that are peripheral in that sense of, you're supplying all the mechanics that are necessary to keep everything going, whether it's food or lighting or whatever, and yeah, I don't know how Los Angeles is going to be able to survive if this goes on for a long period.
I truly don't know. It's sad. It's really sad. You're right. I mean, the higher ups are making billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's not the trickle down theory. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And especially now with things with the AI and things where streaming, it's a whole thing that was never even thought about, that nobody sat down and said, we better prepare for this. Because when this does become the thing, what are they going to do? Because now all the extras will be out of work, because all they have to do is CGI in thousands of people in the background, and there'll be no background people. So I mean, that's what they're fighting for. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough thing. So
and one of our actors that's at APT right now, her husband is within the industry, working within the industry, and so he's been out in Spring Green just because he thought he'd be coming out once the strike was happening, maybe for a little bit, but then so it's like I'm glad he's there with her, but I think he'd prefer to be working. So
undoubtedly, So I'm going to ask you a question, which I pondered, and I've asked a lot of other people that are in our industry here in Wisconsin. How do we get arts funding to be funded in our state? It's embarrassing that our state is second to last in the United States in funding for the arts. Yeah. What can we do? I mean, what can you and I do? What could we do to put the call out to actually get arts funding for our state? I don't understand that.
I am not sure either, because I think that when APT closed, Tony Earl, who is the late governor, he just passed away within the last year or so. was a supporter of theater, and Tommy Thompson was a big supporter of APT and was somebody who always came and saw shows. And one of the reasons that APT was able to come back had to do with the two of them from different, across the aisle were going, no. And how they had to look at it, both of them, was to say, this is important to the economy of our area. And it did have to do, and back in the 80s, it had to do with, well, look at Spring Green. The hotels and restaurants are doing well because there are people coming in. And there are a lot of people who are in the arts community who don't want to sort of talk about the economic ramifications and just say, oh, it should be about the arts. But I think it is important to say, no, we have value to a community because we also add to the vitality of the restaurants that are in the area and buying supplies from different stores and things like that. I don't know how to make anything other than a case for the economics of it.
And that speaks for itself. That's the part that I just don't understand. 'Cause I know Tony Evers, and I know that he's an educator. That's his bottom line. That's who he is, and I know he knows that. But I think he's hamstrung by the other side of the legislating bodies, and I just don't think they get it. They don't have a clue. And I know that I recently attended a seminar. I'm on the board for Capital City Theater.
Oh, good.
And there was a seminar speaking to that issue. And it's like, what can arts companies do in Wisconsin? And everybody just kind of sat there and scratched their head and said, well, what can we do? And it's just one of those questions where I just wish I had the answer for that. I just wish I could be able to say, oh, can't they see it? It's black and white. It's like, yes. It does fund, it isn't just because it's entertainment. It isn't just because it's a cultural thing to do. It's part of the industry. It brings people to it. That's why I never understand. Same thing with television. It's like, why don't we have more TV coming here and filming? It's like since Happy Days, we have like small little things that happen here. Or when Johnny Depp came here and filmed at the Capitol, there's beautiful places to film. Right. Spring Green, number one. Right. Downtown Madison. But there's no arts commission. There's no TV. There's not even a TV and arts commission in Madison. And I find that really, really kind of sad in a way.
So what do you think can start that?
I think you and I need to go and talk to Tony. Tony, we're calling a meeting, and Sarah Day and I are going to come in, and we're going to want to sit down, and I think we just need to get people's voices to make that an issue, because I don't think anybody, I know there are people that must be fighting for it. There have to be. I just don't think it's been loud enough. And I don't think that it's been important enough for people, because there's all this other stuff that goes on that eats up all the news. It eats up all the issues. It eats up all the other stuff that people find is on the front page. Yeah. And they always stick the arts and entertainment in its separate little sector in the back of the paper, rather than it being on the front page.
Well, I also think that one of the things that has been unfortunate is that as budgets have been cut in the schools, one of the things that gets taken away, first of all, it doesn't wind up being the sports teams or anything like that. It'll wind up being music and theater. And one of the things that I think is really important is that music and theater and any kind of arts endeavor are what add to the creativity. And students who have a sense of creativity are going to be the people who make discoveries that affect everything else. That the scientists and the economists and all the other people that we think are the important things, business people or things like that, if they've had a background in creative thinking, and the thing that makes creative thinking are the arts. It expands their horizons. It gets them better at problem solving. They have more resources to draw upon. So when the arts gets cut back in schools, I think that's the number one step to then say, oh, it's just entertainment. And I think that there's more than just being, because if it is just like, well, it's just entertainment. No, it's not. It's much deeper than that. It's creative, and it's a way of thinking, a different way of thinking. And I think that that's part of what our problem is.
And again, that adds into our governor and saying, you're an educator.
That's, and he comes out to American Players Theater.
He's incredibly supportive. And I think, like you said before, one man couldn't do it. It took reaching across the aisle and having the other company of people that, that take the legislature and the Senate to depths that we don't want to talk about.
But it is the exciting thing that happened with Spring Green, like I said, in the 80s.
And that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of that. And it's interesting because all these high schools are building these multi-million-dollar theaters that are unbelievably wonderful.
Yeah.
Yet, where's the funding to actually put the plays in, or put or to do the things that are in there? So, I'm not quite understanding that there's money. And there's dollars being floated around because they're building these beautiful palaces, but it doesn't trickle down into the communities. Yeah, I know the communities are using the high school, which I think is great. Middleton's Performing Arts Center, same thing with Oregon and McFarland. They're using those high school auditoriums to bring in more cultural things outside of their community, which is a wonderful thing because you have to keep the building running. I just wish there was a way that they could really foster that into making a bigger issue, and having them be state funded, because these aren't private schools. No, those are all they're all state funded, high schools. So. Yeah. That's gonna be my new mission, I think.
All right.
And I'm putting you in that. I'm putting you right at the top of that corner.
Board. Put me on the board.
Excellent. I love that. So I'm going to open up. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to just have a conversation about? Anything that has been in your head or your thoughts lately? Other than theater? I mean, okay, so what other things do you enjoy? I know theater's time-consuming for you, and it's all-encompassing, and obviously you love that. But do you have any outside interests or hobbies?
Not really.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I was raised in a politically active family, so that has always been sort of interest to me. So, yeah.
Well, see, I'm going to tap into that.
Okay.
And you live right in the neighborhood, so it's not like we can't have coffee clutches on this every once in a while.
Sounds good.
Well, absolutely. This has been, I could go on and on for the rest of the day, but I know you've got more important things to do with your time. But I am just so thrilled that you took some time out to speak with us. And I've been a huge, huge avid fan of yours, even more so now that I know we grew up together and never knew each other.
That's so funny, isn't it?
It is, but that's how Madison is. It's just it's kind of fun when you realize, and because I went away for a good period of time, that I missed a lot of things that happened in the 80s and 90s. But then the great part was coming back into my childhood home, and coming back and seeing the people who have really shaped the arts and have shaped the creativity and are doing things that are important, like for Madisonians and for Wisconsinites in general. And you're one of those people.
Oh, thank you.
And I really, really, really loved our time we spent today, and I hope to do this again.
That'd be great.
Congratulations on your successes, and have wonderful closing performances.
Thank you.
On to the next venture, and thank you all for joining us with the lovely Sarah Day.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the fall-like weather, and go Bucky! You won today.
Did they?
Yes, they did.
Good.
We'll see you next time.
I didn't even